You don't know anyone. You don't know anyone except yourself. You breathe pain wherever you go. That's your real
Shut up.
Hey, do you know that's why the judge and the expert, they saw that. They saw you.
No.
Then why are they not giving you sole custody?
Because you got a female judge, that's why.
If that's what you want to tell yourself, then fine. If you want to tell your deluded self.
Don't take her, man.
I'm not taking her. I'm not taking her. They gave her to me. Hey.
Hey, baby.
Just the person we want to see.
Hi everyone, it's B007 here for another 10-minute movie review, this week of What Maisie Knew, which is a beautiful new contemporary adaptation of the famous Henry James novel. I will keep the review spoiler-free because it does diverge in some ways from that book, besides which I'm sure that the majority of people watching the movie won't have read the novella anyway. So the idea is that the movie shows the experience of a young girl, maybe 6 or 7, called Maisie, who is experiencing her parents' divorce and then remarriages. And the technical accomplishment of this film, which has been directed by Scott McGeehee and David Siegel, is to situate us in Maisie's world. And they don't do this in an obvious way, which it would have been to perhaps shoot from a point of view camera angle, or to only look from sort of ground up with weird camera angles. It's much more subtle and immersive. All the conversations of the adults that we see are overheard, are seen around corners, underneath tables. And you really do get a strong sense of sympathy and empathy with the little girl. So it's not as much, if you are familiar with the novel, what it's most famous for is its technical achievement in Henry James writing in the persona of a young little girl all the way through to her teenage years. The technical accomplishment of this film is not as daring, but I feel it is utterly successful in how it conveys her experience. So the story of the movie basically has 2 halves. In the first half, we see the marriage breakdown and divorce of the parents. So the mother of Maisie is a formerly, I guess, quite famous rocker, a musician called Susanna, who's played by Julianne Moore. And the father is a character, a British businessman called Beale, played by Steve Coogan. And Susanna is one of those very self-involved, very narcissistic, emotionally manipulative characters. So you never doubt that she loves Maisie. When Maisie is with her, she hugs her and cuddles her, and, you know, you feel that she wants to do what's right by Maisie in that moment, and in one very pivotal moment towards the end of the film. But she also wants to be a rock star, and she wants adulation, and she wants the road and the freedom that the road gives her. And ultimately, she just wants to be loved. So she's very jealous of Maisie, not only in terms of the affection Maisie might get from other people, and it's absurd to say that she's jealous of Maisie as a little girl, as a centre of attention in herself. The idea that one would be jealous of one's own child is really, it hits at something very profound, I think, and it's very disturbing to watch on screen. But what I love about Julianne Moore's performance, as usual, exceptional, is that although Susanna does some horrific things in this film, she is always 3-dimensional. We always get that small saving grace aspect of her where she does love her child. The father of Maisie, Beale, is in some ways more conventional. He's the classic busy father who's got the wife and the nanny, who's having a bit of a midlife crisis. The parents divorce, he marries the nanny, in a totally predictable move. And there is a sense in which, probably subconsciously with the father, that marrying the nanny is basically arranging childcare. And certainly in the mother, Susanna's retaliatory marriage to the young barman Lincoln, played by Alexander Skarsgård, there's a very ambiguous but certainly quite disturbing hint that maybe she has explicitly married him. Not necessarily for childcare, but to prove to the courts that she is also providing a family home for her daughter. So you have these 2 parents, both quite self-involved. The father in a slightly more, not neglectful way, but a more casual way. I mean, I think he sees his life in Europe, ultimately. And there's a very moving conversation between Beale and Maisie, where he, in this moment of sort of wild fantasy suggests that the two of them could run off to England together and leave behind the ex-wife and the current wife. And Maisie's, of course, desperately keen to do this, until she realises that would involve leaving her mother behind. And there's this awfully slippery, very clever, very nuanced scene where Steve Coogan as Beale goes from wild excitement to having to manipulate Maisie into changing her mind. And there's so much depth and meaning about what it is to be a divorcing parent of a young child in there. It's absolutely excruciating to watch, but for all the best reasons. So while the parents are just being utterly horrific to each other and to Maisie, underneath that you have the two people who are sort of the adoptive family of Maisie, the new stepmother and stepfather, Margot and Lincoln. And they are two delightful characters in their own ways. Margot probably more naive than Lincoln. Both of them with a genuine rapport with Maisie and realising that if they don't step in with some kind of childcare, this kid is just going to be neglected and really traumatised and harmed. But I think that ultimately where this movie falls down, as it does, I feel, sadly, in its final act, is in its treatment of the relationship of these two characters. There's a brief moment where the director flirts with some very dark material concerning the consequences of this neglect and manipulation of Maisie, which is absolutely petrifying, and I wish he had pushed further into that. But he kind of comes back from that brink, and then almost goes from one extreme to the other, where he goes from this very dark material back into something almost saccharine. Still, despite that sort of final misstep, I have to say, massive kudos to the director for really giving us a film that focuses entirely on Maisie and really does give us as convincing a portrait of a sensitive young girl enduring divorce as Henry James did with the original novel. And also, I have to finally mention Onata April, I don't know how you pronounce it, the young girl who plays Maisie. She has that wonderful quality where you want to spend time with her. She has this face that displays a whole flickering range of emotion, and you really do care that she is okay, which is ultimately what you need for this film to succeed. So despite its choices in the final act that are different from the novel, I would strongly recommend that you watch this film. I think it's a beautiful piece, not just as what one might expect, which is a sort of a four-handed acting masterclass, which it is, because Julianne Moore and Steve Coogan, absolutely amazing, but in its whole package, in the production design, in the music. The score to this movie is fantastic. It really does deserve to be seen widely, and I very much applaud the director and producers and distributors in deciding to give it a limited art house release, but also make it available on demand, because my goodness, this movie deserves to be seen by as wide an audience as possible. So whether or not you're a fan of the original Henry James novel, I hope that you do try and check What Maisie Knew out. And if you agree or disagree with my take, please feel free to leave a comment on the website at b007.com. And in the meantime, happy movie viewing.
Bet you if you sink, you'd swim a little further. And I bet you if you cried, you'd understand me better. So I take a little time just sailing down the river, and I'm throwing out my line to see if I can catch the feeling of being how still the night, feeling of being one little light.
What Maisie Knew has a running time of 98 minutes and is rated R in the USA and 15 in the UK. The movie played Toronto 2012 and it opened earlier this year in the USA, Taiwan, Germany, Finland and Denmark. It's currently on release in the UK, Ireland, Greece, the Netherlands, Australia, and is also available to view on demand.